Christians who refused to obey the Lord. When I knelt down to pray again, I collapsed into a prostrate position before the Lord, and the vision started again. The Lord showed me where Christians who refused to obey Him, and knowingly went, those who went against the will of the Lord. These people's flesh was grey and speckled with purple, black, yellow, and red bruises. Their flesh was rotting and falling off, their eyes were almost pure red from blood because the blood vessels in their eyes were continually bursting. They were bleeding out of their eyes, nose, ears, and mouth. They were chained down and were being branded over and over again with the name of their particular sin or sins. Those who had abortion. Then I saw what happened to women who had purposely terminated their pregnancies and had killed their unborn babies. The women were chained down to a bed of nails that pierced their bodies continually, and they were going through the pains of giving birth over and over again. But the pains were magnified by an unlimited amount, and their wombs were being torn open from the inside out. And their bones were being torn out of socket over and over again. False teachers and prophets. Then I saw what happens to false teachers and prophets when they end up in hell. They are chained up and their joints and bones are being pulled out of the socket. Their bodies looked like limp rag dolls but bloodied and grossly disfigured. Their tongues were being pulled out of their mouths and pierced over and over again. Those with the sin of pride, and the last thing I saw in hell was the place where people who had the sin of pride go. It was the worst thing I have ever seen. These souls, they barely even looked human anymore. Their eyes were torn out, and maggots and huge worms devoured their flesh. Their ears were being bitten off by some kind of demonic creature with 3 rows of unbelievably sharp teeth. The souls were being hung on a large fish-like hook, by their tongues. Their genitals were being torn off and there were scorpions and all sorts of creatures and bugs crawling out of their mouth and underneath their skin. The people's skin was almost see-through, and you could see snakes eating them from the inside out from their stomachs. But the worst part was that the whole time, these people were being horribly beaten and whipped. The whips were barbed and ripped flesh off with every strike. There are 39 strings on each whip. The creatures who were wielding the whips were being splattered in the soul's blood and flesh, and the souls were being whipped front and back. The Lord told me that the reason pride's punishment was so severe was because no one, especially unsaved humans, has the right to be proud. Only the Lord is deserving of praise. Everyone in hell is naked and bleeding somehow. Endless pain and tortures of every kind are everywhere. There is no escape. The smell is beyond putrid. It smells like rotting flesh, burning hair, and death. Every one of our senses is intensified by millions. Touch is extremely sensitive, sounds are incredibly loud and piercing, smells are multiplied in intensity by innumerable amounts. You can almost taste the smoke and the pain. The rancid and decaying smells made me throw up. It was the most disgusting and the saddest thing I have ever experienced. Spread the word of how much their disobedience and sin hurts me. I cried out to the Lord and begged Him to take me out of hell. And all of a sudden I was no longer in hell. I was weeping so hard though, my body was shaking and I was still wailing out in heartbreak and sorrow. I had never been so humbled and broken-hearted. Nothing compares to the horror of hell, except for the sadness of a soul going to hell. I couldn't comprehend how the loving and kind, and merciful Jesus I knew could condemn the people He loves so much that He died for them, to an eternity of torture, pain, and hopelessness. Then the most amazing thing happened. Jesus picked me up and set me on His knee. He cradled me, held me, and stroked my hair. Immediately I started to have peace, and I calmed down enough to be able to breathe almost normally. I knew it was the Lord because He was radiant, and He was stunningly beautiful, even though I didn't see His face and I barely could see any of Him. It was more than enough to take my breath away. He said, "My little one, I am showing you this because this is the fate of every person who walks through their life without me. This is their fate if they don't repent and trust in me. I love them, I shed my blood for them. They do not have to go to hell. I am the Almighty and powerful God, I can save them. But they must choose me, they must choose to follow me. I walked the path of perfection on the earth and gave my life so they could live for eternity. Spread the word of how much their disobedience and sin hurts me. Tell them of how much I reach out for them. Tell them that I love them, but it is their choice. Tell them, and reach out to them, for you have seen their eternal punishment if they do not turn from their sin and repent. Tell them. Then my vision ended, and I wept even harder. The Lord loves all of the people in hell, but it's their choice to love him back or not. The Lord only showed me a minuscule amount of hell, but I will never be the same. I will never look at another person the same. Every soul is precious in the eyes of the Lord, and he doesn't want anyone to go to hell. Even though I had heard that hell was a horrible place before, I had no idea. You can hear it over and over again, but you just can't comprehend it until you actually see it. Hell is the worst place, and there is no hope for those who are in or are going to be in hell. There is no mercy, no kindness, no love, and no hope. Please, I am begging you, repent and turn to the Lord for mercy. He loves you so much. Hell is real, and it is beyond horrible, beyond terrifying. Nothing compares to hell.